After Clause 77, Amendment 176, Lord Moylan.
My Lords, I rise to move clause amendment number 176 and to speak to 178B, both in my name, and I'm grateful to noble Lords who've given their support. In the course of discussion of this bill, we've had much debate on the question of the powers of mayoral authorities and also the question of balance between those upper-tier local authorities, regional authorities, mayoral authorities, and those lower down the chain. These amendments continue that debate in a different way. With noble Lords' agreement, I'm going to start by speaking to 178B, and we'll come to 176 after that. Amendment number 178B is very brief and technical, but has quite a lot of effect. It amends the Greater London Authority Act to allow the Assembly to amend the Mayor's budget by an absolute majority, not requiring the two-thirds majority as now. Although it's drafted to apply to London, the point, if granted, would have a wider effect because, of course, there are other metropolitan authorities, mayoral authorities, which have similar arrangements for the scrutiny and passing of a mayoral budget. When the Blair government set up, but I will speak about London from my experience, and the other matters can be taken later. When the Blair government set up the Greater London Authority in the 1999 Act, they were very wedded to the idea that the mayor, that it should have a very strong mayor, a sort of Nietzschean superfigure bestriding the capital and, crucially for our purposes, able to impose his or her own budget on London, even if opposed by a majority in the elected Assembly. No reason was ever given for this, as far as I understand, and it entailed a significant denial of the norms of democracy. Ken Livingstone, when he was mayor, and Ken Livingstone had a certain sense of irony, used to sit in the public gallery of the Assembly when his budget was being debated, and every time he lost a vote and there was a majority against it, he would give a little chuckle and declare a triumph, because, of course, although there might be 50 or even 60% of the members voting against that particular provision in his budget, it had no effect because they couldn't achieve a two-thirds majority. The powers of the Greater London Authority, when set up, were strictly limited to being a strategic authority for London. That is what was explained. They were not meant to be a delivery authority. The Mayor did operate 4 functional bodies in addition: Transport for London, the Metropolitan Police, the Fire and Rescue Authority, and a body called the London Development Agency. And although the architecture around the Development Agency changed slightly later, that position remained. But the powers of the Mayor have increased very significantly, and as the government has made clear in discussion on this bill, it's the intention to increase the powers of mayors in other parts of the country as part of their devolution and levelling up approach. And so what we're seeing is that mayors are accumulating more powers and larger budgets. The Mayor of London, for example, is now responsible for the housing budget for London, which is billions plus. And these are being accumulated, but the co-decision and scrutiny functions that go with that power are not being kept up to date. And in fact, this is recognised, I think, by the government. I even saw, I think in a newspaper, it may not be government policy as yet, but that government was speculating on seeking to increase the scrutiny of elected mayors by setting up panels of local MPs to scrutinise what they were going to do. There is no need to set up panels of local MPs to scrutinise elected mayors because the Assembly exists, the scrutiny body is there already. What it needs is empowerment, and that is what this amendment does. And so, although it is I'm putting a burden on my noble friend in inviting her to explain why we should be denying democracy in our great cities and urban areas. That is such a burden that it's quite possible, in fact, that she will decide to agree with me, and I will look forward to that very much indeed. Turning now to a question of balance of powers, we come to amendment number 176. This concerns a power, again I will speak of London. 176 is drafted to cover the whole country. It's not specific to London, but I'll speak of it in London terms because of my own experience and allow noble lords to draw the parallels with other areas, if I may. In the case of 176, it relates to a ULEZ charge, a power that the Mayor, in fact, has had since the foundation of the Greater London Authority. It's in the original, the road user charging is in the Greater London Authority Act going back as far as 1999. But the expansion here is in geographical terms. It is being taken from a small and very focused thing, as it was under Ken Livingstone, a low-emission zone around Heathrow Airport and a congestion charge just round the very centre of London. It's being expanded not only to include inner London, which has already been delivered, but also to include outer London as well. That is the current proposal, into areas that are wholly different from inner London, areas that are best understood by their own elected councils. And yet they have no say. This amendment would give them that say, as I say, not just in London, but in other parts of the country. It gives a power of co-decision with local councils in the extension of a road user charging scheme, the ULEZ in this case. It requires that decision be made by the local council in full council. It wouldn't be a decision of the executive arm of the council, the cabinet, for example, or the local elected mayor. It would be a full council decision. It also, and it makes it retrospective, so that existing schemes to continue would have to be subject to such a vote. It also ensures that local councils have regard to their air quality duties under the Environment Act when making their decision, because nobody is in favour of poor air quality. It's a question of how to get there. My lords, Londoners and those in adjacent counties, of course, value clean air and healthy air, but they are groaning under the burden or the proposed burden of a rushed ULEZ, one that is imposed during a cost of living crisis, a scheme that has a wholly inadequate scrappage support scheme attached to it, and one which in large parts of outer London is not strictly necessary because of their very different characteristics from inner London. They're almost rural characteristics, and this is evidence from TfL's own impact assessment of what the ULEZ is going to achieve. They look to their local councils to express their voice, and our job, I suggest, is to empower them to be able to do that. This measure has support from members of the Liberal Democrat Party and Liberal Democrat councils. The proposal for ULEZ has been opposed publicly by members of the other place from the Labour Party, and so I hope it will command the widespread support of your Lordship's House, and not least get support from the one party not mentioned so far, the Conservative Party, when my noble friend comes to reply. I beg to move.
Amendment proposed after clause 77, insert the new clause as printed on the marshalled list.